The point is to create margin, make time and energy and money for what matters, because it's not the stuff,
Right.
it's the relationships, it's the journey. And so minimalism, I don't really see as an end in itself. It's a means to an end for creating a richer, more rewarding, more impactful life.
Hi, Glenn. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Terry. Thanks for having me.
So I want to start with what inspired your philosophy and your book, Take Less, Do More?
Well, I guess it started with backpacking, or more precisely bike packing, I guess. I've always been interested in taking less, because when you're carrying it on a bicycle or on foot, it becomes painfully obvious. I think sometimes in life, maybe we don't realize all the impacts of the extra baggage we're carrying, so to speak. But in 1976, I graduated high school and rode my bicycle across the country with a couple friends. And so, I researched it. I mean, the stuff that was available almost 50 years ago was nothing compared to today. But, I cut my toothbrush in half and did everything I could to lower the weight of what I was carrying then. And that's been pretty much a theme in life since then.
And I've read your book, and I loved that story of you traveling with your friends across the country. A great story. I won't give it away, but a great story. Your book is full of great stories, actually. What is ultralight backpacking, and why do you do this?
Well, and people probably do it for different reasons. And in talking about ultralight or lightweight backpacking, for those of your listeners who aren't backpackers, might not have heard this term, it's common to compare base pack weights. So your base pack weight is all your gear except what you're wearing, and not counting food and water. Because obviously you're not carrying what you're wearing, and food and water will vary on the trip. How much water is available, how long is the trip, how many days of food you have, things like that. So my base pack weight, generally when I'm going out for a backpacking trip, and so this is my pack, my sleeping pad, my sleeping bag, my tent, all my extra clothes, insulation, hat, all my first aid, cooking equipment, weighs under 5 pounds. So most people, there's some discussion about most people, I think, a base pack weight of under 10 pounds, they consider lightweight. Under 7 pounds, they generally consider ultralight. So, and under 5 pounds, people call it extreme ultralight or things like that. Uber ultralight, just depends.
Wow. It amazes me, this whole concept, because I am not a light packer no matter where I go. It's always my goal to bring as little as possible on a trip, but we go away for a weekend and I'm packing a full suitcase before I know it. So it's absolutely amazing to me.
And it's applicable. I've had fun in recent years. We do a lot of traveling in Europe, and I've applied the same principles. In fact, my wife and I did a talk at our local REI here. I will go to, I can go to Europe for 8 weeks of hiking, nice restaurants, museums, in one very small carry-on, because I've thought very hard about every single piece of clothing, every piece of equipment. And it's great being able to go with such lightweight and always have all your stuff with you.
Yeah, that's absolutely amazing. Now, in your book, you talk about how your lightweight backpacking principles have sort of guided you. And in particular, you talk a lot about generosity, gratitude, and curiosity throughout the book. Why are these principles so important to you?
Well, generosity, when you're traveling with very little weight, you don't have as much margin for error. And so I think sometimes generosity becomes more crucial in those situations, sharing what you have. I was on a trip once, so not surprising, I weigh my food, so I know, I don't carry extra food, because food tends to be a heavier item. I was on a hike with my buddy Reed, and we were like 1 or 2 days in, and suddenly I'm looking at my food bag and I realize I must have done the math wrong because I do not have enough food for the rest of the trip. And I explained this to Reed, and he says, well, here, let's stop and, put a pad out and pool all our food and just split it down the middle, and we'll each be a little bit hungry rather than you being starving or having to end the trip early. And I think an early lesson in generosity, I think growing up, my mom taught us by what she did. I always remember her saying noblesse oblige, which generally, if you have been blessed, that comes with an obligation to share, basically. And we were on this bicycle trip. We would typically, we had no money. We were kids, and we would stop and either sleep at a rest stop, or if we were in kind of a small town, we'd just go knock on a door and ask someone if we could stay, on their lawn, camp on their lawn. And this one evening, we stopped and knocked on a door, and an old guy, and then now, I was 17 at the time, so I don't know how old he was, but he moved old. I mean, I'm guessing, trying to project, like probably maybe 80s. And he said, "Oh yeah, sure, but come around the side. It'll be softer, more protected from the wind." So we're setting up our tents, and he comes out and asks what time we leave in the morning, and I said, "Well, usually around 7 o'clock. We've got 4,200 miles we're doing here." And he said, he looked disappointed. I said, "Well, why do you ask?" And he says, "Well, we'd really like to send you off with a proper breakfast, but my wife has terrible arthritis, and the mornings in particular are just really hard for her." I said, "Well, that's okay. We don't expect anything. We're happy to have a nice place to sleep." And he came back with a box of donuts since they couldn't get up to cook breakfast for us, which, we gratefully accepted, but told him it wasn't necessary. So the next morning, we're packing up, chomping on donuts, and the door opens to their house, and the man motions us over. So as we walk across the dew-soaked grass, he motions us in to a full breakfast. Yeah, I'm convinced to this day that we ate through their week's worth of groceries in a single sitting, because we're riding, 80, 90 miles a day, and we're 17. I mean, we're bottomless pits, basically, four of us. And there were eggs and bacon and sausage and potatoes and fruit and muffins, and I mean, just a staggering amount of food that, as far as I remember, we pretty well polished off. And just so touched me that, in spite of all the pain, it was important enough to them to be generous with what they had and make a huge impression on the four of us. And I've been telling that story for 50 years. I wish it was pre-internet, so I could never connect with them afterwards. Couldn't find them. Or,
Yeah.
I mean, if I'd been a little smarter, I could have gotten an address, I guess, but I was 17. And so that was an early, lesson in generosity to me that stuck with me.
Yeah. How has that generosity, how's that influenced you as an entrepreneur?
Well, I guess I never worried. I always remember someone saying, make your boss look good, and things will work out. Don't worry about your career. I've never asked for a raise, never fought for my rights or anything like that in a job. I've always just tried to do the best job I could and make my supervisor look good. Use my creativity or whatever talents I have and my work ethic to just do a good job. At least in my case, I feel like that's paid off. I mean, I'm a sample size of one, so who knows if I'd done it differently. But, being generous, I think, as an entrepreneur, I've never focused on what I needed. I mean, I accidentally started a gear company, Gossamer Gear, never took a salary from it to this day.
Wow.
I worked full time. I was just doing it to help other people get into the outdoors with less weight. making gear that helped that happen. And, I've had incredible blessings from that.
Mhm.
They just haven't been in terms of salary. So I don't know, I've been lucky not to have to worry so much about the money, and that's always seemed to work for me.
How would you recommend the audience listening, how would you recommend they apply minimalism to their lives?
It's tough because your audience is probably in a lot of different places. I mean, obviously if they backpack, I'm your guy. Or even if they travel, I think there are obvious benefits from minimalism. But a book I really like, Things That Matter by Joshua Becker, is a famous American minimalist. And the point isn't to really own less. I mean, some people get caught up in that, but the point is to create margin, make time and energy and money for what matters, because it's not the stuff,
Right.
it's the relationships, it's the journey. And so minimalism, I don't really see as an end in itself. It's a means to an end for creating a richer, more rewarding, more impactful life.
And do you find that minimalism helps to enhance decision making in business or help entrepreneurs in terms of running their business?
I would say so. I mean, you've probably experienced this, when you're completely overwhelmed, you get brutally efficient. When when, I'm retired now, it's like, yeah, I can squander time. And, part of that is I enjoy, because I never had the time to squander before. But there's nothing like pressure to refine your decisions and force minimalism, I guess, in your decision making. But I think often another book I really like, which I've referenced in my book, is Subtract by Leidy Klotz. And it's fascinating how when we're faced with a decision, we're wired to think about what can we add to this to solve this, rather than what can we take away to make this work better. And it's a fascinating book, which I think would have a lot of applications to our entrepreneurs. It's like, instead of what more do I need to do, it's like, wait a minute, what if there's another way? What could I stop doing that would actually move me forward?
And do you have an example of how you've applied that in your life, that idea of subtracting? I'm sure you have lots.
Yeah, well, I'm actually a pretty lousy minimalist in most areas of my life, except for backpacking.
Gotcha.
That's one area of my life. And part of that's complicated by, I've been married 42 years. And Francie's approach is, well, if you have space, it's like, who cares? Just keep it, store it.
Right.
Now, that mostly applies to fabric. She's a big crafter, but kind of her general approach to life. So, my areas in life tend to be a little more, or areas in my house tend to be a little more spare than hers. Examples of subtracting. Well, this is a silly one, but when you get in a shower, if it's like an old shower that has like a hot and a cold faucet, you generally turn it on. You turn the hot and cold on to about what you think is right, and then if it's not hot enough, most people would turn the hot up,
Mhm.
but I would turn the cold down till it got to the right temperature, because that gets you to the temperature water you want, but it takes less water to do it. Trying to think of other like everyday examples. I have lots of backpacking examples,
Mhm.
clearly,
Well, I'm sure.
but I'm always looking for the most efficient. I think part of that is being an engineer. What's the most efficient, which drives my wife crazy. But even silly things like when I make my lunch, I'm always thinking like, okay, there's ingredients that come out and ingredients that go in to both the pantry and the fridge. And so I'm always thinking ahead of like, okay, how am I going to take these out or put them away in order that minimizes the amount of times I open the fridge and the number of trips I take to the pantry. So I'm just always kind of thinking of like, okay, how could I, to me, it's maximize efficiency, but minimize the trips or the effort or, and it
Hmm.
involves thinking ahead. It's like, okay, not just what am I doing now, but what am I going to be doing? And is there something I can do now that's going to make that easier? So I think that's something
Right.
that most entrepreneurs have probably figured out by this time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, that's great. And you mentioned that you're retired now. How are you spending your days now that you're retired?
Well, I'm actually, I'm a lot busier retired than I thought I would be. The one thing I do, my alarm goes off at 6 in the morning, 7 days a week. Now, when I was working, I only got up to my alarm 5 days a week, but it was set at 3:30. So, to me, that's a fair trade-off. Uh,
Hmm.
and then I come downstairs, do a devotional, read my Bible, meditate, practice a language until about 7:30, 8ish, and then Francie usually comes down the stairs, and I sit on the couch and spend time with her, reading the Wall Street Journal, talking about articles or what's going on with our days, and reading some coffee and doing some Sudoku. No, drinking
Nice.
some coffee, doing some Sudoku. And that feels like such squandering of time, but I really like it,
Nice.
because I never got to do that before. And Francie was on the short end of that stick for most of our lives. And then, I'll get on with the day. I'm still active in Gossamer Gear, the backpacking company I founded. In fact, I've got a board meeting later today. I tinker with gear designs, stuff that I need for trips or that we need for our adventure van. I have writing that I do. I have podcasts like this.
Yeah.
I have writing that I do on, updating the website, blog posts, meetings with people to figure out if there's something I can do to help them or something they have that I need to hear. And then trips. I mean, we were gone. I was just adding it up for our Christmas letter in the works, and we were gone 126 days last year.
Wow.
So we do a lot of traveling
Yeah.
overseas, and then a lot of traveling in our adventure van. We just turned 100,000 miles on Wally, we call them, in 4 years. So
Oh, wow.
yeah, we like to be home, but then we like to be gone too. So
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah. Do you have a favorite place that you've traveled to or a favorite trip you've taken?
a favorite trip, I don't know. And generally, if we're talking backpacking,
Mhm.
my general favorite is to be in the mountains above tree line.
Okay.
So that's a general guide, although, I pretty much like to be outside anywhere. So slide canyons, the desert, just about anywhere. But yeah, if I get to pick, it's mountains above tree line.
Nice.
We've done some great hikes in Europe. We did the 450-mile Alpe Adria Trail. It starts at a glacier in Austria, and you hike through Austria, Slovenia, and Italy, and end up at the Adriatic Sea, 450 miles. That was a great hike. Yeah, and then I've done some bike packing on the Great Divide. That's always fun. Different mode of travel. You see different things on a bike than on foot. Yeah, and then
Yeah.
we do like travel kind of in the Western United States in our adventure van. There's a lot of public land, so a lot of opportunities to boondock, and we've just been in some gorgeous spots. To spend the night. Just amazing.
Yeah. It sounds amazing. How did you get into hiking? Because I'm someone who I love the idea of hiking, but I can never, it just, I don't know, I just never get into it. But when I hear you talk about it, and when I reading through your book, I'm like, this sounds so amazing. How did you get into it? And how could someone like me maybe start to get into hiking?
Well, I got into it in Boy Scouts, and I think it's important. I mean, to distinguish whether you're talking about hiking or backpacking. Uh,
Mm, right.
Day hiking, I really don't care for. I mean, I'll do it, but I really like to sleep in the dirt. I mean, to me, that's part of the fun, the whole challenge of the right gear and cooking your meals and finding a camping spot. And, it allows you to get further into the wilderness. Um, and that's one advantage of ultralight is, if you're busy, like most of your listeners probably are, and you only have 2 or 3 days or maybe 4 days to get in, if you can only hike 5 miles a day because you got a heavy pack, that limits your range. If you can hike 20 to 30 miles a day because you got a super light pack, well, you can do some cool trips in 2, 3 days. So I got started in backpacking probably through Boy Scouts when I was a kid. And we ironically didn't do a lot of backpacking per se, but we had like camps in the woods where we'd go for the weekend, and each patrol had their little site. So it was like being outside and living outside, so to speak, for the weekend. So that got me exposed to it. And then that 1976 bike trip, where we're sleeping every night at someone's lawn or at a roadside rest area or a couple times city park, just got me used to, I guess, that kind of life on the trail, so to speak. And it is intimidating for someone that hasn't done it. But one of the cool things is, when you do backpacking with minimal gear, you realize how little you actually need in life. And this kind of gets back to gratitude. In our normal lives, our lives are amazing, but they're just our lives. So we just go, yeah, that's my life. And we take
Right.
it for granted. But you spend a week out there sleeping on the ground, in a sleeping bag, eating freeze-dried food, treating your water. You get back and it's amazing. You have potable water at like multiple locations in your house at any temperature
Yeah.
you want. That's a miracle. It's crazy. You have a soft bed, with like, get cold, you just pull another cover on. It's not like you wake up shivering and have to shiver yourself back to sleep.
Yeah.
So really, you realize how little you need. And that, I think, gives you appreciation for how much more than that you actually have.
Mhm.
So if you want to go backpacking, probably start with the hiking, I guess, just, general fitness, stuff like that, because the gear is a whole nother thing, having to figure out, how you set up camp. And, I love getting people, and I'm not good at it. I have friends that actually, take people that want to get backpacking, but don't, because there's a steep learning curve, if you're
Mhm.
starting from like the couch. And he's a great teacher, very patient, and developed systems for teaching people like, you know, this is what you need to know, and kind of boil it down to the basics, and take on a trip to kind of, you can get the ropes and figure out if like, this is something that's like, this is amazing, and I want to do more of this, or like, it's okay, but it's not as much fun as I thought.
Yeah.
So he's down in California. I can connect you with him. You could check it
Nice.
out.
Yeah. Yeah. Sounds interesting for sure. How do you practice gratitude? Like do you have a daily practice that you do, or is it just something that's sort of a part of your lifestyle now?
Both, I would say. My morning prayer time always starts with gratitude. So, I'm not great about it, like writing a gratitude journal or anything like that. Um, I do try and reframe things. The other day, I was driving somewhere with Francie somewhere, and we're on this kind of main road into town, and the traffic's backed up. And I'm not super patient. I don't wait well in general. So I think I'm going to take a left and go on this other alternate route. So I do that. I get up there and the road's closed. It's like, that's why all those people are on that road. And now I lost my place. Now I'm like either further back in the line, and I'm starting to get frustrated. And then I thought, whoa, 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 whoa. Let's step back and take a look at this. You're in a car that works great. You know, you've got a beautiful woman sitting in the seat next to you. You're retired. You have no schedule. You have nothing on your appointment. And this beautiful woman wants to spend the next hour, well, 50 years, but today, the next hour doing something with you. That's like, you really got nothing to be frustrated about.
Yeah.
So I try and, catch myself and reframe everyday occurrences like, whoa, let's not look at what's wrong. Let's look at what's right here.
Yeah, it's a great way to look at things. Now, I have some rapid fire questions for you if you're game for it.
Sure. Those are always exciting.
Oh, what's your favorite book?
Favorite book? I'd probably say the book that I've given away the most is The Comfort Crisis by Michael Easter.
Oh, I haven't heard of that one.
It's like the TLDR version, I guess, is, we've done too good a job as humans of creating comfortable lives, and it's killing us. So he talks about the need to get outside, the need to challenge ourselves. Fascinating book.
Yeah, it sounds like it. I'm definitely going to have to check it out. What's your favorite food?
Favorite food is, probably whatever's in front of me. But it's hard to be like fresh sourdough bread.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you bake your own, right?
Yeah, we haven't
Yeah,
bought bread in years. Yeah.
amazing, amazing. What's your biggest pet peeve?
I try not to have pet peeves because to me, like a pet peeve is something that is revealing something to me about myself.
Mm-hmm.
I don't wait well, so that would be something that makes me wait is generally things I need to work on. People not thinking ahead because I'm so used to like kind of thinking ahead. But like, the person in front of you at the checkout line, they give them the total and they have to find their wallet and then they have to find their credit card. It's like, you've done this before. Like you knew this was coming, right? I mean, you could have been
Yeah.
prepared. And then I'm like, well, what do I care? But it's like, so
What are 3 things you'd take with you to a deserted island?
3 things with a deserted island. I'd probably take my wife, Francie, because it's like, I just really like being with her.
Nice.
Yeah. Pretty much if I got her, I only need one.
Perfect. Perfect. I love that answer. And what is your go-to karaoke song?
I hate karaoke. I'm not like a music guy. I never listened to music growing up. So I don't know, whatever song it would be, it'd have to be really large words because I will not know the words to it.
Fair enough. Fair enough. And my previous guest, Dylan Evans, passed along the question, what is a habit that you would like to change?
That's a good question, Dylan. Thanks. Habit I would like to change. Wow. Yeah, because I'm lucky. I've got a life that's pretty fun right now. I'd say I don't know, reaching out more. I mean, I've forced myself to reach out because I'm an introvert, and really, connections are the value in life. And so my habit is, unless I force myself to, I'm busy with tasks, balancing statements or doing something by myself. And so if I could do less of that, that would be a good habit.
Yeah, sounds like it. What's a question you would like to pass along to the next guest?
So I'm a big fan of the handwritten note. And
Mm,
I would ask the next guest, who is someone that you could write a note to today that could change their life?
oh, I love that one. That is a great question. And any final thoughts you'd like to leave the audience with today?
I often inscribe my books, work hard, be nice, and stay curious.
Perfect.
So, it's simple, but it can work.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. Thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate this.
My pleasure.